followed by guest speaker Carolyn Bell-Ringer, President and CEO of Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation, who is on the line to provide a short presentation on the item. And I'll note for all of you that staff from our legal services is also on the line to answer questions. So over to you, Councillor Hardwick. You may be muted.
Thank you very much, Chair Carr. I'm very pleased as a member of the informal working group of Council to present to you our report based on the last several months worth of work. Just identifying again and saying thanks to Councillors Bly, Carr, Dominato, Fry, and Kirby-Young for our bi-weekly meetings, and sometimes more frequent than that, in working this process through. Our objective at the end of the day has been to create an Auditor General office, which is a new institution within our framework as the city, but also ultimately strengthening our relationship with our citizens through the representation directly between the audit function and City Council. The background on this, originally it was over a year ago that this standing committee unanimously voted in favor of a motion calling for the establishment of an independent Auditor General office for the city. In December, we allocated $500,000 from the operating budget toward the establishment of this office. We've spent less than 10% of that in this year. In February, we created the informal working group and empowered them to engage the Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation to research and report back with recommendations to Council. And in July, the informal working group and the former CEO of the CAAF presented those recommendations to Council. Now, those recommendations to Council specifically laid out the fact that we needed the city's solicitor to bring back a bylaw for Council's approval and enactment. And it is that bylaw that we have worked with Kelly Olschwager in the city solicitor's office, really starting in August through today. So that bylaw is what we'll be reviewing together with terms of reference around the creation of an Auditor General Committee of Council and a recruitment committee. The report, this presentation I'm running through right now really refers back to the report, which can be linked to through the city's website. The report is really an overview which attaches the Appendix A, which is the actual bylaw, together with Appendix B, which is the terms of reference, and then Appendix C, which is in reference to the recruitment committee. This is a slide that came from the Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation report. We are right now at the building foundation part, establishing the legal basis through the bylaw, and through that we're also talking about resources and the recruitment process going forward. The bylaw itself is detailed as Appendix A in the report. It incorporates recognized principles designed to safeguard the independence of the Auditor General to the extent under the Vancouver Charter. We did, in the first motion, have 2 outside legal opinions undertaken to establish that we did have the ability under the Vancouver Charter to establish this office. And it's laid out, the bylaw also lays out the mandate, which is namely to conduct performance and compliance audits that address the use of all public money by the city, efficiency, economy, and effectiveness of the programs and operations, and public financial management. When we get to questions, I'm sure any questions regarding the construction of the bylaw would be answered by Kelly. It should be noted in each case, though, that it's essential that this undertaking be free from influence from city management. This is an entity that is independent of city management and responds directly to council as the elected officials. The audit committee is a key part of the terms of reference of what we're looking at today. We look at the mandate and membership, the number of elected officials and the external members, which I'll describe in just a minute, and then the legally creating of the committee, which is, again, part of the bylaw, which we're dealing with today. So in identifying the composition of the Auditor General Committee, which should be distinguished from the Audit Committee, it was determined there would be 7 members, 5 members of council and 2 external advisory liaison members who would be equipped with key skill sets, an appropriate level of expertise to assist councillors. And we put out a canvas to the members of council to determine who would be interested in being inaugural Auditor General Committee members. And here's the list of the council members that put up their hands. Councillor Bly, Fry, myself, Kirby Young, and Councillor Wiebe. And we would seek the 2 external liaison members from the auditor community. The recruitment committee is similarly independent, 5 members of council with 2 external advisory liaison members. And again, this is important that this recruitment process be undertaken independent of management and staff. So similarly, we went out and canvassed members of council to determine who would volunteer to be part of this. And this is the list of councillors that have volunteered: Bly, Carr, Dominato, myself, and Kirby Young. And again, we would be seeking 2 external advisory members from the audit committee or community. And the next piece of this, besides the bylaw and the 2 committees, is going back and starting to research what our needs are going to be in terms of logistics. So we will be seeking input from real estate and facilities management. We're going to need offices. Now, it's pretty clear that in 2021, if we're successful in recruiting the Auditor General in Q4, which we're already in, it's likely that that individual would be starting in Q1 2021. So we're only estimating that there would be 1 to 3 full-time employees in 2021, and it's unlikely that the office would be fully deployed until 2022. So in 2021, it's likely that the very small number of new employees would be working in borrowed offices or remotely. We'd also need to explore technology. We'll need city computer software, and so we'd also be needing input from the chief technology officer. And in both cases, we would be looking for input this month. In terms of city services, sorry, I hear somebody needs to mute there. Please, whoever. That the Auditor General staff would be working within the service construct supplied by the city in the same manner and level as provided to other parts of the city, but also ensuring the security and privacy and independence of the Auditor General's work. In terms of corporate policies, the Auditor General Office Vancouver staff would also be subject to the corporate policies of the city, and that would be across the board. And the only difference would be if there was an exception from the policies and that an exception had been approved by the Auditor General Committee of Council, but that's down the line. In terms of financial issues, there was, as I mentioned earlier, $500,000 set aside. We've spent less than 10% of that on the report from the CAAF. We expect to spend some on recruitment and one-time setup fees associated with the office. The timing, again, as I described, we would see only a small portion of the office drawing down on funds in 2021, and it's more likely that 2022 and onward where we would expect a full complement of the budget. The number of $2 million as an annual budget, again, anticipating that in 2022 at the earliest, was derived from a comparison to other comparable municipalities. In particular, the CAAF looked at the City of Ottawa, our national capital, and the regional municipality of Halifax as having similar sizes of population and budgets. And we have looked at those budgets. This is outlined for those that want to get into the detail in Appendix C on the CAAF report on page 29. Again, comparable in the million to 2 million range, sort of a 8 to 10 full-time equivalents when it's fully tricked out, which again, we're expecting would not be before 2022. Operations and management or maintenance rather would be conducted under the similar pricing as the city in general. And there will be one-time investments that would be involved in setup. So here is a simple organizational chart where we see the Auditor General, likely an administrative coordinator, a deputy, a couple of principals and auditors. We roughed in a budget looking at these positions, which was, we looked to some of our domain experts in the audit space for their thoughts and got some general notes back on the ballpark numbers that we were looking at, which were more in the area of $1.5 million with one-time expenditures in setup and contingency. Just to give you a sense of order of magnitude, although again, I should emphasize that in 2021, this would be limited to maybe 30 or 40% of the total budget. In terms of the bylaw itself, again, I point you to Appendix A in the report. And with Council's enactment of this bylaw, the legal foundation for the Auditor General Office will be established. And with this, this new system of accountability, which is, I should point out again, consistent with what we see in the other major cities across Canada, including Toronto, of course, and Montreal. I've mentioned Ottawa, Halifax. And I should also mention that every city in the province of Ontario with a population over 100,000 has an Auditor General office. And so the relationships then are separate between Council and the Audit Committee of Council, together with the Auditor General, and then that being independent of city management. So in conclusion, this informal working group has worked hard over the last number of months to bring this report forward to you. And we recommend approval. And again, approval of the bylaw, of the appointments to the Auditor General, the creation and the appointments to the Auditor General Committee, as well as the Recruitment Committee. And again, just going through them, A is the bylaw itself to create. B is pursuant to Section 161 of the Charter to create the terms of reference for the Auditor General Committee. And presuming B being approved, we have, again, the initial or inaugural committee will be appointed. And then, oops, that didn't lay out quite right. Then the recruitment committee similarly would be formed under Section 161, and then presuming that is approved, then the appointment of the committee itself. And then finally, F is that we direct staff, as set out in the report, to report back on the office space, technology, administrative, and corporate services needed to support the operation of the Auditor General Office, with the expectation, of course, that once the Auditor General is hired and in place, that they will refine this process, because it will be, without a doubt, an incremental process. And with that, I'll conclude our presentation of the informal working group. And I'm not sure, Madam Chair, exactly if we move to questions at this point, or whether we would be having a presentation from